How I Got Here, the inside stories of startups and innovation in travel and transportation, with your hosts, PhocusWire's Kevin May and Mozio's David Litwak.
Welcome to How I Got Here, the inside stories behind travel innovation and startups. I'm Kevin May, I'm the editor-in-chief of PhocusWire. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host David Litwak from Mozio. This week, we're joined by Oliver Dlouhy. He's the CEO and founder at kiwi.com. For those that don't know, it actually started out as Skypicker, but essentially kiwi.com is a flight search engine. However, it does have a very big twist. It allows passengers to interline, which is, for those that don't know, is kind of connecting between specific flights. It does that, but these are for flights that aren't officially connected. I'm sure Oliver will go into details about how that came together and essentially the big problem that they were solving. Kiwi is consumer facing and it's also B2B, so it helps online travel agencies and others and airports, and it's working with a lot of people. It's done very, very well, which is why we've asked Oliver to come along. It's based in the Czech Republic, but that's pretty much enough from me. As welcome, Oliver, as always, but we always ask our guests, tell us how you got here, Oliver, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Kevin. Hi, David. Hi, everybody. So how did we get there? It all started like 8 years ago when me and my then girlfriend, now this wife, wanted to go for a vacation to Portugal. And yeah, we are both based in the Czech Republic, and the tickets to Portugal were pretty expensive. It costed like 400 euros, which back then for us as broke students was a fortune. So we were looking for some low-cost flights. Unfortunately, there were no direct low-cost flights, so we ended up buying a flight or booking a flight from Prague to Milan, then from Milan to Porto, then back from Faro to Eindhoven, and from Eindhoven back to Prague. All of these flights were on different airlines. One was on Ryanair, another one on EasyJet, another on Wizz Air, and I think the last one was on Ryanair again. And the thing was that it took us like 7 days to really find the connections. So it really connected well, and we didn't spend too much time at the airport, but still we had enough connection time to catch our connection. So we're thinking, because this way we actually saved around 85%. So the final tickets costed around 80 euros in comparison to 400 by Portugal. We're thinking that no one was actually offering these connections. So if we would be able to automate it, and if we would provide it to the end users, to the final customers, maybe this could be a big gap in the market. Maybe we can really save lots of people lots of money to lots of people and enable them to travel. And that's exactly how the idea was created. And then we just, had to find investors, we had to find developers, we had to build it, from scratch, and that's pretty much how we are here.
Okay, thank you very much. So I suppose the obvious thing to ask at this stage, Oliver, is were you surprised that there wasn't somebody doing it already? I know you went through this, this process of trying to do it when you were doing it as travelers, but once you started digging and thinking this was an idea that perhaps we could tackle. As you looked around and saw how the industry operated and all these kind of things, did you not think, I can't believe somebody hasn't done this before?
I was pretty surprised, to be honest. And initially, when I spoke to a couple of other companies, the biggest OTAs in the market, everybody actually told me that they were on it. They are working on it and they are releasing it very soon. But still, I was thinking, it is worth a shot because, these guys, they were working on it for a couple of years already. They still, didn't make any progress. So I was thinking that maybe they are just doing it wrong. And I was actually right. So basically, we took the approach which was different to what everybody else was doing. We took a little bit, I would say more guerrilla approach. And this way we have managed to build the engine completely from scratch. So we didn't use any GDS or any third-party solutions, but we have built a whole content acquisition and booking engine completely from scratch. And this is our biggest strength, not only in the beginning, of course, which the strength enabled us to actually come up with a virtual interlining, but even going forward, this turned out to be our biggest strength, even for the standard non-interlined flights. So I think it was a good bet. Maybe someone would say crazy bet, but it's paid off big time.
So I remember one of the first times we met, Oliver, I asked you this question, which was, I said your rise kind of reminded me of how Zynga rode Facebook and they kind of figured out the Facebook algorithm. And one of my impressions was that because you always managed to find, not always, but a good percentage of the time managed to find the cheapest route, you would pop to the top of Kayak and other meta search engines. And I asked you point blank, I was like, do you think as other people are catching on, your cash cow and your customer service kind of, customer acquisition, insight was going to be copied by others? And how much do you think that's the case? And how much do you think people are catching on? And how much do you think that insight and meta search was core to your expansion?
Yeah, so when it comes to meta search, and that's actually a great question. When it comes to meta search, these websites and apps, enabled us to grow so quickly. Without meta search, it would be super difficult, because one thing I forgot to mention is that we are pretty much bootstrapped company. We only raised around 1 million euros in total from the very beginning, and the company is profitable almost from the day one. And without meta search and without their capability of bringing traffic and selling it to us, it would be super difficult to really break through. But when you're asking about the competition, yeah, of course, even if it would be a total rocket science, which it actually partially is, there will always come someone who will try to copy us, and we already see many companies doing that, be it the small OTAs, be it even the biggest ones. So the key is to always innovate and not to get stuck with one single product. But we are now trying to expand, not just, as I said, not just in the virtual interlining, but we are becoming pretty successful even in the standard flights, even in the, let's say, more commoditized offering. And this is mostly thanks to our system and engine that we have originally developed just to support the virtual interlining. But it turned out to be so robust that it can support all of the other content, and not just flights. I'm talking about also ground transportation, as David know very well, right? So what we have built is a beast that can crunch all of the transportation data and provide it to the customers in the best possible way to find the best and the cheapest connection from A to B. That's what kmay.com is about, and that's what we are really, really good at.
Now, to take us back a little bit, Oliver, I mean, when you were, interlining is not new. It's been around for many, many years, and it's through like-minded airlines that want to be able to connect people. Now, you're doing it virtually. It's unofficial interlining. Give us a sense, if you can, of the conversations that you were having with airlines in those early days when they realized what you were doing. Was there any kind of resistance from them? Or were they quite happy to, let's see what these guys can do because we're not convinced they can do it? I mean, just give us kind of, how did that all kind of come about and the reaction that you got from the carriers?
Yeah, so there's like a handful of carriers that are really stubborn, that don't want to implement, these new technologies, these new ways how to do that. Our business model in the very beginning was really based on our capability of gathering the data even without the consent of their owner. So even if the airlines did not want to share the data with us, we had the ways, I'm talking about, for example, scraping or using third parties to get the data into the platform and to process it anyway. So these were the beginnings. Today, majority of the airlines actually have direct partnerships with us already. They are giving us the data voluntarily, and we are very good partners. Of course, even now there are airlines which do not want to work with us. My personal belief is that these airlines are basically against building the customer value, because if the customers are buying that content, if they are using it, flying on that flights and virtually interlining, if there is a demand for this content, the airline should basically accommodate to what the customers want. But again, we have this capability of getting the content anyway. So even if there are, very few, and I'm talking about, let's say, 5 airlines which are resistant, we have them in our platform anyway.
Now, sorry, it's kind of a follow-up, really. I mean, we would obviously be delighted if you would tell us who some of those airlines that were resistant are. But if you cannot, can you just, were there certain types of airlines, by which I mean were perhaps the low-cost carriers a little bit more amenable to what you were doing, or was it the flag carriers that perhaps weren't? Can you generalize in that way, or is it very, very kind of a mixture?
Yeah, so I would say that most of the airlines that have their business model based on direct traffic acquisition. This is pretty standard to the local carriers. But currently, even with some of the biggest ones, we have direct partnership. So if I would share one example of really resistant airline, that would be EasyJet. These guys, they are building their own interlining engine, and although it is, it can provide much less content than our engine, they only have partnerships with very few airlines, as opposed to us, who are capable of interlining EasyJet with 600 carriers. They are still trying to suppress Kiwi.com. But again, we have their content, we are very competitive, and we are able even to very nicely compete with their own virtual interlining efforts.
Now, just on that, I mean, from a kind of a broader context for the startups listening who, may face similar kind of resistance from established players when they are starting to talk to, people in the industry with their idea. I mean, have you kind of tweaked your approach when you're talking to them? I'm assuming you've knocked on the door of EasyJet many times over the years. How have you gone about kind of changing the message with them?
Yeah, so we are always open to win-win partnership, to compromise, to a way how to make it work for both of us. EasyJet, and I'm not saying EasyJet is the only one. There are a few airlines, but probably EasyJet is the toughest one to work with. They just don't want to. It seems to me that they want to come up with any compromise, with any let's say proposal that would make it work for us, them, and most importantly the customers. We are still very open to work with them, and if someone from EasyJet is listening, please drop me an email. Let's meet and let's try to fix it. Otherwise, we will continue anyway.
Well, certainly appreciate the blunt speak. So it's funny, you rewinding a second there, you mentioned ground transportation, and obviously, yeah, I'm quite familiar with multimodal. I wanted to delve a little deeper there because I think perhaps that answer got a little lost. I think like the fundamental answer to your last question was you guys are continuing to stay both the lower cost and the most the cheapest and the best option by adding these other forms of transportation. So I know you're combining buses with trains. I know you have a partnership with Flixbus to combine that. Can you speak a little bit more about how you view multimodal? Because we've had several interviewees, and I actually forget who's launched yet so far, but Omio Go Euro has come on. We've had Wanderu and Silver Rail, and everyone seems to have a strategy for how they're attacking that multimodal market. So I'd love to hear you expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, so from my perspective, and we are not at multimodal anymore. We are going intermodal. So multimodal, just to explain it, multimodal is being able to search all the modes of transportation in one platform. Intermodal is not just multimodal, but it's also basically the interlining between all of the modes of transportation. So in one trip, we can connect bus, train, and flight. And later on, even ride-hailing and taxi and city micromobility. This is what we call intermodal. We connect this in one single itinerary, and sell it to the customer in one single transaction, which is guaranteed. So even if the bus, for example, is delayed, the customer misses the connecting flight, we always cover it. So this is what we call intermodal, just to make it clear to everybody. And when it comes to our strategy around that, our kmay.com is a transportation company. We don't really see us as an OTA. We don't think that we'll ever be able to compete, for example, with booking.com or Expedia when it comes to accommodation or when it comes to packages. But what we are good at is moving people from any A to any B anywhere in the world. So far, we've been focusing mostly on, let's say, middle and long haul transportation, so from country to country or from continent to continent. So these are flights mostly, but now with integration of, as you have mentioned, Flixbus and the other bus carriers, and the same with the trains, and in the future even the ride hailing and city mobility. We are aiming even at even just around the corner transportation, from my place to the bar, for example, or to the job. So basically, we want to be the company that moves people, again, from any A, anywhere in the world, to any B, anywhere in the world, in one single transaction, in one single platform.
How have you thought of that about frequency? Because we had Aaron from Silver Rail on board, and he was saying how, I think he said, Trainline, the average person opened up the Trainline app or went to the Trainline website once, 22 times a year, I think it was. I could be forgetting the exact stat, and comparing that to the average OTA was, maybe 2 to 4 times a year, and how this, really made it kind of highlighted the absurdity, how more people weren't focusing on these other forms of transportation. I know me and you have spoken a little bit about how, transit apps and local mobility is kind of like the new, OTAs, that OTAs in general should be moving more and more into local mobility. So could you expand a little bit more specifically on the local mobility aspect?
Yeah, so when it comes to frequency, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, this is extremely important, because the traffic acquisition for the OTAs is the costs are going through the roof, and we at kmay.com are strong believers in frequency and staying on the top of mind of the customers by basically creating multiple touch points. So as I mentioned, we are also integrating ride hailing and taxis and city mobility. The reason we do that, besides having the full transportation content and really the ability to move people from A to B, is also to generate frequency. We don't think that we will make tons of money on reselling Lyft content, or selling Lyft's capacity. We might be actually even loss making on this content. But we believe that if people learn to use kmay.com every single day, or even multiple times a day, to move around their city, to go to their jobs, etc. Then once they are ready to book a flight to the other side of the world, we'll be there and we'll be on top of their mind. So this is basically our general understanding of the ride hailing within the broader ecosystem of transportation.
Any other services other than ride hailing and transportation? I was thinking how Priceline bought OpenTable, and that was tangentially related. Any plans for anything else?
For us, this is basically part of the broader monetization and bringing some extra value to the customers. But we don't think that we'll ever be experts on any other services. Of course, we are considering, for example, integrating food delivery. Or accommodation is obvious, and all of the OTAs are selling hotels. But we want to bring these services only in a cooperation with someone who is much better equipped to build their own product around these services. So I can imagine working with the Delivery Hero on the food delivery. I can imagine working with Priceline or Expedia. Booking.com. And Expedia on the accommodation part, but really our key competence is in the transportation.
Great. So let's go back again a little bit, if we may, to just kind of the formation of the company in those early few years. I mean, it was Skypicker originally. Obviously, you're no longer Skypicker. So first part of the question really is, what was the thinking around changing the brand name and stuff like that? And then, I mean, you referenced earlier that you've raised almost next to no money, not least because you've been making money since the word go. But you know, was there any temptation, given that the venture capital market does seem to be fairly free and open with handing out money to travel startups, was there any temptation ever to go after big pots of money in order to grow potentially faster? So first part, changing the name. Second part, temptation to grab more money.
Okay, so changing the name. So yeah, as you have said, we started as a skypicker.com, which was $8 domain, which was free, which we bought at the or registered, in the beginning. And after a couple of years, we've noticed that this domain is not serving our purpose very well. Back then, we were already realizing that Skypicker is not just going to be only about flights. So the sky might have been confusing. More importantly, the Skypicker, it was really hard to remember, and people were confusing it with other brands. I'm not going to make a promo to the other brands, but you can probably imagine which brands it was confused with. And people were, misspelling it. So we had misspellings like Sky Tracker and this kind of stuff. So we were thinking about something much more universal, and we're at the same time trying to find a word that means the same thing all around the world, that is spelled the same way and pronounced the same way all around the world. And we have actually, after some research, we have realized that there are only 5 or 6 words like that. One word is panda, another word is siesta, another one is kiwi, and there are like 2 or 3 more of them. And we liked kiwi the most because, except for New Zealanders, kiwi is basically exotic to everybody. So it really it has very positive connotations and connection with traveling to most of the people, except for the great and lovely country, but small, of New Zealand. So we have decided
sorry, Oliver. Just on that, I mean, before you come to the second part of the question, I mean, it's either a fruit or it's a country in the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, were you worried about it not being the new brand name being particularly aligned to what you were doing, arguably?
Well, that's why we have .com. So we are not the bird, we are not the fruit, we are not the country. We are kiwi.com, and kiwi.com is all around transportation and traveling. There are other brands which are seemingly unrelated. Look at Kayak, for example. So I think actually this kind of brand name, it has something in it, and I'm really glad that we have chosen this one.
Okay. So the second part of the question was around your, was there a temptation to go out and, vacuum up some of the millions of dollars that seem to be awash in the industry?
Yeah, so maybe you have noticed that earlier in this year, we have onboarded a new investor, General Atlantic, who have basically bought out most of our previous investors. So it was purely secondary money. None of the money went to the company. It was just, to basically swap for the original investors who pumped this 1 million into the company, as I was saying before. So with GA, of course, GA, they have deep pockets, and they are encouraging us to coming up with a plan how to, efficiently and effectively invest more money. We are investigating a couple of opportunities. So far nothing is closed yet, so it will be difficult for me to comment on it. But yeah, we are looking around possible, for example, M&As or some other ways how to spend higher amount of money. But since the company currently is profitable, it's growing, and the business model is, I would say, validated and proven, there is no imminent need to raise cash. So we are looking at opportunistically, basically.
But I mean, and that's great. It's just, it's a long time between the formation of the company and what happened earlier this year. I mean, was there any other times between then and earlier this year that you were tempted to go and raise money?
Well, I think actually this is the difference, maybe, I don't want to generalize too much, but this is the difference between, let's say, Central European entrepreneurs and the Western, especially Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. We really wanted to And again, I think both of the approaches are valid and they make sense. But we are really, about delivering some value before asking for money, delivering some real value, which is validated by customers willing to pay to us, and not just for the base service, but also cover the margin we are charging them. This is what I see, as a real valuable and sustainable service. If the customers are happy to pay even some extra for the service, and this has been the whole approach of kiwi.com from the very beginning. So and since we are growing, a very high double digits at the beginning, even triple digits a year, there was really no reason to boost it even further, because it would become unmanageable. The growth, even as it was now, which I would say it was pretty fast, it was really hard to manage from me and the rest of the management, because we had zero experience with this kind of a company and this kind of a growth. So I cannot imagine, if some extra money would boost it even further, how would we be able to manage it? It would be hard.
So quickly, many people might not know, but you guys are based in Brno, Czech Republic, spelled Brno. And I remember the time I visited you, I had to fly into Vienna and take a 2-hour car service to Brno. And you guys had several buildings, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple thousand employees in a Czech
Mm-hmm.
Republic city that I'm pretty sure most people listening to this haven't heard of.
Right.
How, a couple of questions. Why did you choose Brno, other than maybe the fact that you live nearby there? And why did you think that it's a good place for you to build a tech company? And how did you feel locating such a big company in not a major metropolitan area?
Yeah, so I don't live so close to Brno. I live like 170 kilometers, so like 2-hour drive away from Brno. But I went to Brno to study university, and when I got dropped of the university, that's when I started a company. And so somehow we like the city. Brno is quite okay actually for starting a technology company, because it has 3 universities that are producing 1,500 to 2,000 IT professionals every year. So and the cost per person or per IT professional in Brno, the costs are significantly lower in comparison to Prague, the Czech capital. And when you compare it to London, for example, it's a fraction, or actually, or at least it has been a fraction. Now it's much more balanced, as people are working remotely for Western companies, etc. So the competition is fierce. But back then, it was a logical step, out of the 2 main cities in the Czech Republic. Nowadays, we still have most of our engineering in Brno, but we also have like 6 or 7 other engineering offices all around Europe. For example, now today I'm in Barcelona. We have our office here. Currently 25 people. We want to scale up to 45 until the end of the year. So I would say that we have already took all of the best talents from Brno. So everybody good is already working for us, and now we need to expand globally. So we are starting in Europe, but at the same time we are developing, let's say, a remote collaboration framework that would enable us to hire anyone from anywhere in the world and work with us remotely.
That plays perfectly into what I was about to comment and then kind of ask your opinion on. Mozio, we're 73 employees, and there's only 3 American employees, and we're in 40 different cities around the world. We, 8 years ago when we started, I think we were also at the kind of, the time where people would raise their eyebrows about remote working, but we did it out of necessity and frugality, and realizing there was good talent everywhere. So I think there's a trend towards being less discriminatory to that, oh, you aren't located in Silicon Valley, New York, or London. And there's been a lot of success stories from that company you don't want to give a prop to in Edinburgh to you guys in Brno. So I'm just saying, do you have any, like, it sounds like you're moving more and more in that direction to completely remote. How do you think about that versus, it's something we've noticed is that it's fine if you're completely remote, and it's also fine if you have all one office. Often in between situations don't work. So how do you feel about balancing remote work plus having offices? Will people feel left out?
Yeah, so we are a transportation company, so we really encourage people and even subsidize their travels. So for us, we're looking at this kind of hybrid type. The thing is, it's about actually three main things. First one is discipline. Second is tooling. Third is processes. So we need to hire people which have a discipline that even if they are not seeing their peers every day or every week, they still deliver and are working hard, and they do care what's going on, etc. Second, those are processes. We are currently trying to build a framework that will allow us to work without any limitations remotely, in comparison to being there being there in the office. So basically, all of the meetings, even though everybody is present in person, are being recorded. There are summaries of the meeting and minutes from the meeting, stored in the cloud. And we are encouraging everyone, even if they want to discuss 10 minutes to just whatever issue they have, to fill minutes from that discussion and put it on cloud where it is searchable by anybody. And the third is tooling. So we are now looking at, for example, augmented reality tools that would make everybody, even on the other side of the world, feel like they are sitting in the same room with the others. Of course, this is going to take some time until the technology will be perfected. But we are looking at it already and investing, amounts of money into building this proficiency in remote collaboration.
It's interesting. PhocusWire as well is a semi-virtual company. We have our news editor is in our Manhattan office with Focusrite, but the rest of us all work from home. I mean, I've read that you have 2,500. It's probably increased since I looked this up, and you call people crew members, which I thought was quite cute. But related to the kind of the virtual kind of workforce, how have you gone about kind of creating a culture around the company? One, given that it's grown so quickly to 2,500 people, but also that you're all virtual. Beyond the the tools that you were just talking about, which kind of around efficiency and being good managers, but how do you kind of create a culture as well?
Yeah, so in Czech Republic we have this saying. It's something like "fish smells from the head." So it means that it's all about the head of the fish. So even at the high level, we are really trying to hire the people who are 120% fit to the company. It's extremely important because this is cascading, even to the lower levels of the company, mid management and lower managers, and then regular employees. We call them kiwis. So I think this is one important thing. At the very high level, people need to be 100% aligned. And I would say that actually it's necessary that the people are even personal friends, not just work colleagues. And if their reports see it, they try to mimic this behavior and mimic this approach, and then it cascades across the whole company. That's one thing. And another thing is that although we are growing quite fast, we are still trying to keep this, let's say, punk culture. So anybody can talk to anybody. We are super transparent, or trying to be at least super transparent about all the decisions. So anyone at any position can actually comment and argue with even me or anyone from the management team about any decision we have made. And I believe this is extremely important, because if you just come and say this has to be done, don't ask me the questions, just do it, people become demotivated. You don't get the buy-in of the people. So I think it's extremely important to make people part of the decision making, although sometimes we pre-process the decisions as the management, so we don't spend time or like on, let's say, complete bullshit, but then we come up with a couple of pre-processed options, and we make all the people part of the decision-making process, which is creating lots of motivation, and people basically understand what they are, what the objectives are, and the work is much easier and motivating for them.
Tell me, Oliver, I mean, just in the research and looking around a little bit more about you rather than the company, I mean, you were named one of Forbes 30 under 30 in the Czech Republic. I mean, what did that do to you as a kind of a founder and your general profile within the country and the tech community? Did it help, or was it just good PR, would you say?
More people are asking me to lend them some money. So I keep on explaining that all of my money are actually still at kiwi.com. So it's sometimes difficult for someone to understand. No, I'm kidding. It's not that bad. But I mean, for me, I don't really care that much. It wasn't me who applied for that position. So someone applied on my behalf. For me, actually, the Czech PR is mostly about hiring the right talent. So kiwi.com currently, after 8 years in operation, we are quite well known in the Czech Republic. We are probably one of the most famous startups in the country, and that obviously helps to find the right people, because we are a sexy company, and when we are competing now with and I don't have nothing against them, but with companies like Siemens, IBM, Honeywell, we are in a way sexier than them, partially also thanks to these kind of initiatives and thanks to these PR buzzes. So this is the only value I can actually see around being 30 under 30 or any other similar award.
Just quickly on this subject, because I'm just curious, because being thrust into the limelight can be quite, it's an interesting experience, but it can be quite daunting. When we've met before, Oliver, you all seem a fairly humble, quite low key kind of gentleman. I mean, how have you found being kind of thrust into the limelight? Is it something that you're comfortable with as a founder and as an entrepreneur?
Very difficult to say. I cannot say I completely enjoy it, but I think it's just a part of my job. And when I look at it from this perspective, and at the same time, given I really want to do my job properly and the best way I can, I just take it as a part of it, and I didn't actually even think about it anymore. So if there is a chance to really promote company, even promote myself, as I'm sort of one of the faces of the company, I just do it, including actually including this interview. So I think actually it's, as long as it's helping the company, I'm very happy to do it, and I don't think about it.
So I want to rewind to something you said about 20 minutes ago, how you guys built a lot of your own connections. You didn't rely on GDSs, and we just, I think a week ago, put out the interview with Philippe Chirec, who, in addition to being president of MXGBT, also helped found Amadeus. And at one point I asked him a question saying, if you had to disrupt Amadeus, how would you go about doing it? And you seem to kind of have done it in your own way. And obviously I don't think you'd characterize yourself as trying to disrupt Amadeus
No.
first and foremost, but you have duplicated a lot of what they've built. And I'm curious if you could go a little bit more into that B2B strategy and how you've thought about whether to work with the GDS or not, and replace them.
So we definitely don't aim to replace Amadeus or any other GDSs. And when you said we disrupted them, we might have disrupted a very tiny part of what they are doing. GDSs are bringing lots of value to all of the parts of the supply chain. So we really took a very tiny piece where we are, I would say, and they know it much better than they are, and they are very, very slowly catching up, if they will ever be able to. But from my perspective, to comment on the B2B part, the main objective here was to basically de-incentivize the others to invest into the same technology. So we have built it, and we have seen that there is a demand in the market, and there are a couple of companies investing in there. So we're thinking, okay, how do we prevent them from doing that? We cannot. Either we buy them, we don't have money for that, and why would we do that? Or we just release it for everybody for free. So we decided that I think we are really very value-driven company. So we think that the way how to bring the most value possible is to have your services accessible to the widest spectrum of the users, and that's exactly what we have done with Tequila. If you are referring to this product that we have launched the last year, this is our B2B platform that again makes our content, full content, virtual interlining, standard flights, ground transportation, buses, trains, whatever you can think of, accessible to anybody who can. We will just register and start using the API. And again, I believe that this was a very good step from our side to incentivize the others to trying to build the same thing.
Tell me all of it. Before we get towards the end, I mean, what would you say has surprised you most about the journey that you've taken so far? Has it been the growth? Has it been the way it's been adopted and the profile that the company has raised? Is there anything that you can kind of identify, or has it been a number of things that you've thought, oh, okay, that's perhaps not happened how we envisaged it would?
So I'll be completely honest with you. When we were starting the company 8 years ago, we were broke. Me, our CTO and co-founder, and the others in the company. So it was much more about the money. Of course, we wanted to build something meaningful, but we wanted to basically we wanted to start earning some money to cover our basic needs, etc. And we were actually thinking that within 3 to 5 years we will exit the company and start enjoying all the proceeds coming from this exit. So what surprised me, or actually at least what I didn't expect, was how much I did change during the process. So today, after 8 years, I had the opportunity to sell a much bigger stake to GA. I sold only 0.5%, basically just to pay off my mortgage. And I left the rest of the stake and the rest of the money within the company, not because I believe that it will grow and then I will capitalize on it much more. Of course, it will grow, and I might sell it for much more money. But basically, the reason was complete opposite, or very different. The reason is that what motivates me is the hunger, the uncertainty. It's so great to know that if I screw it up, I might end up, not on the street anymore, but in much, worse condition than I'm at now. And it's extremely motivating for me to really think about the company, all day, all night. Sometimes I wake up 3 a.m. with some ideas, coming from maybe some dream or nightmare. I'm noting it, on the paper. I never thought, just to answer a question, I never thought that I'll be so motivated and so completely engaged in something that looked very intangible to me back then, as the company is. So does it answer your question?
Yes, it does. I've just got one more, really. I mean, you've been very open with this, which has been terrific. I mean, would you be happy to identify one time when you've screwed things up?
Ooh, well, every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the biggest one then?
So probably the biggest one would be the focus. So the last year we have actually started to invest in building a holiday packages product, which was probably one of the worst decisions we've made. We felt extremely strong in the virtual interlining. We felt that this is going to grow unlimitedly. So we started investing into something completely different. Back then, we thought that this is the right way to go. Today, if I could have turned back the time, I would have invested much more in our core capabilities, reinforcing our core business, making it stronger, protecting it more from the competitors. I think that we have realized that before the disaster came, so we have killed the project. Now we are back, focusing on one single thing. But basically, to answer your question in one word, defocus. This is the biggest mistake, not just probably me, but many entrepreneurs make.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very
Thank you.
cool. Thanks a lot, Oliver. This has been wonderful. We're out of time today, but I think Kevin would agree with me. This has probably been one of the most transparent interviews we've
Yeah, for
had,
sure.
down to exact
Happy to hear
percentages
that.
and which problem airlines there are. But yeah, so
I told you.
yeah, no, you did. So this has been How I Got Here, stories of innovation in travel and transportation. And next week we'll have another. And thank you very much, Oliver. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to the How I Got Here podcast. We'll be back next week with more inside stories behind startups and innovation in travel and transportation. Check mozio.com/move for a complete write-up of the highlights of every podcast with translations into 5 languages. And get your daily dose of news on the digital travel economy by subscribing to the newsletter at PhocusWire.com. See you next week.